Developing right now, who pulled the trigger at the New Orleans Mother's Day Parade shooting that was captured in this Vine video? Now New Orleans police hoping this piece of tape will help them catch a shooter.
The Vera Institute of Justice is a New York-based nonprofit hired by the City of New Orleans to perform the function of risk assessment for pretrial defendants incarcerated in the Orleans Parish Prison.
Vera, as you know, is a national not-for-profit organization. We've been here in New Orleans, at least had an office here for a little more than 5 years, although we started work here in late 2006.
The risk assessment is based upon a risk assessment instrument that determines a person's risk to the community for either reoffending or for skipping court.
We came up with a program which does, as it does generally in the country, assess individuals for their risk. So when defendants go to court, they are assessed for risk. The information is developed and provided to the judge so that the judge can make a fully informed release or detention decision at that first appearance. And that decision can be based on the risk that the defendant poses to either not return to court or to reoffend.
So the risk assessment instrument is the survey itself. In this case, it's a 6-page questionnaire that also contains a 12-question risk assessment based on the questionnaire. It is broken into 4 basic sections: the defendant's criminal section, the risk assessment section, the social section, where he lives, stuff like that, and then a financial section. And Vera indicates that there is extra emphasis on gun crimes or crimes of violence.
So we weight violent crime more heavily because clearly that's a bigger problem in this community and bigger problem everywhere, really. So we looked at the research at what are the better predictors of violent crime, and we weighed those more heavily.
So the question today is one case in particular in the city of New Orleans, a case known as the Mother's Day shooter.
Developing right now, who pulled the trigger at the New Orleans Mother's Day Parade shooting that was captured in this Vine video? Now New Orleans police hoping this piece of tape will help them catch a shooter.
A gentleman by the name of Akeem Scott is accused of, on Mother's Day, shooting 19 people at a Mother's Day parade in New Orleans. He had been arrested in March of that same year, right before Mother's Day, and assessed through the Vera Institute of Justice, and they used their risk assessment tool. He apparently came out of the risk assessment with a score of a 3. And it was asked, how could he possibly come out as a 3 while he was in jail charged with illegal carrying of weapons, illegal possession of a stolen weapon, resisting an officer, possession of heroin, carrying weapons during the crime of violence with drugs, and contraband into the jail. And the question was, how could he come out with a 3? And then what would his assessment be after he shot 19 people? And the answer to that question, looking at their risk assessment, is he came out a 3 because that's all he qualified for, based on the questions that they asked. Vera did ask a number of questions that they were required to verify, but apparently failed to verify. Questions about his criminal history that turned up on the newspaper after the Mother's Day shooting that they didn't catch. Questions that they asked that he lied on. Questions about his status with school, that he was a high school graduate, which apparently was not true, and that he was attending college, which apparently was not true. His rating apparently after the Mother's Day shooting appears to be, instead of a 3, he would gain a few more points and he would become a 7. This is a 7 out of 24, meaning that he is still very low risk.
And of course there are going to be some people that are high risk and need to be retained in jail prior to trial because of the risk that they pose. But this moves to a risk-based system so that if they are low risk, regardless of whether they have money or not, they're able to be released prior to trial. And plus, as John was alluding to, the sort of corollary to that is that because you're innocent until proven guilty, you're entitled to be held under the least restrictive conditions that are necessary to ensure return to court and public safety. So if you are low risk, least restrictive probably means that you're entitled to be released on your own recognizance on a promise to return.
All right, setting aside the fact that the risk assessment instrument doesn't work. It doesn't allow for high ratings. I guess the next question would be, why the Vera Institute? Why a third party? Why not just the courts itself? What does the Vera Institute of Justice provide other than just the risk assessment?
Question: why are you guys needed? Why shouldn't the system do that anyway?
It would be difficult, if not inappropriate, for the police to ask these questions of an arrested person, or the district attorney, or the court to ask these questions, or the sheriff's office. So as an independent entity that's neutral, we can collect this objective information and do what we have experience doing, use statistical tools and otherwise to create and implement a risk assessment tool that gives carefully calibrated information so judges can make better decisions. But it's easier if it's an independent body collecting this information.
All right, having already discussed the statistical analysis of the information and seen the result of the risk assessment instrument itself, looking at the other claims that it would be inappropriate for the police or the judges or the DA to ask the questions that are asked in the 6-page survey, looking at all 6 pages, the first section is a criminal history. The police, the judges, the DA, they're going to have that information. The 12 questions, again, can be filled out by anybody. The only questions they would have to ask are you working, or are you a student, where do you live, how long you live there? Everything else they already know. I don't think that the working or the student thing would hurt their case or hurt their issues with the DA or the sheriff. Going to the next section, it's asking where you live, what part of school you went through. Are you in college? Things like that. It's not. There's nothing there that they don't already know or can't find out or don't care about. And then the last section, determine a person's financial situation to determine if they need a big bond, a small bond, no bond. Well, we know they're going to rate them low. So the next question is, should they get a free lawyer? But there's nothing in this Vera Institute of Justice risk assessment instrument that the court doesn't know already or can't find out on its own or just doesn't care about.